The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to Love Your Body, Love Your Life. My name is Jenna. I'm the author of the book titled Love Your Body, Love Your Life, 52 Tips That Will Radically Change Your Health. And you can find my book on Amazon and on barnesandnoble.com. And today we're talking dating. And it's interesting. I've done, something like 34, 35 shows. And this is the first time I have a dating coach on my show. So I'm super excited. I have been quote unquote dating for 4 years now. And Lauren Smith, author and mindfulness teacher, helps self-aware women date in peace. And when I read that, I was like, okay, how do you go on a first date and stay in presence and in peace? So Lauren is going to shed some light on that for us. And with that said, I'd love to bring her on. Lauren Smith.
Hey, Jenna. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So as you just heard me, let's just dive in with that. How does someone stay like truly, like the nerves and meeting somebody for the first time, and that you're spiritual and you have your life like set up in every other aspect. And then when it comes to dating, you're like, okay, who am I right now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, dating is clinically stressful. It's not just you, I think it's very scary when you go out to date because you have to really be vulnerable and put yourself out there and risk rejection. And that in itself is nerve inducing. But chemically, when we're in that situation, our body does release a lot of cortisol. So our stress levels are high. It's difficult to maintain calm and peace through that. But there are a few strategies that I'm excited to share with you today. And I'll just kick us off with the first one, which is the foundational lesson, mindfulness. I'm sure you've all heard of mindfulness. A lot of people use it casually to be a synonym for awareness. But it's so much more than awareness. It's like you said before, it's about presence. It's about being fully in the present moment with your senses and coming from a place of non-judgment. So you're just accepting everything that's happening around you and just kind of being the center of the storm. So if you can approach dating from that perspective, you got a great place to start.
Yeah. I like to say, sitting with being uncomfortable and actually sitting with that.
Yes, exactly. Allowing the discomfort, noticing where in your body or in your mind are you feeling that discomfort. I think a lot of times we add to our own stress by trying to push those things away. And it's like you're trying to hold up like an overflowing well of emotion. And that becomes a secondary stress. So when you can allow that emotion, I know it sounds scary, but when you can allow it to just flow over you and through you, that's actually where you're going to find the peace. There's a lot of data in that flow. And when you can notice it and really investigate it, you can say, hey, why am I feeling like I need to push this away? Because really, you're just pushing away you. You don't want to push away any part of yourself, especially when it comes to dating, because you want to be fully aware and say, I need all of my wits about me. I need to think about every single part of this amazing being that is me to make sure that I'm bringing in a person into my life that's going to see that and honor that too.
Absolutely. And I guess what I'm hearing when you say that is, and just coming from my own experience, is I'm really good about blocking away my feelings, like what I'm actually feeling, what emotion am I actually feeling? And, just to be open, what I said was true. I've gone on a lot of first dates in 4 years because, I went through divorce 4 years ago. So, yeah. So the first relationship out of my divorce, I had so much anxiety, even in the relationship, Lauren. And I didn't even have the words to express what I was feeling a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I heard when you said that part, is actually you don't want to push away any part of you, meaning any emotion that you are experiencing in that moment. Am I right?
I agree with you. I have a lot of anxiety too. I suffered with clinical anxiety for a large part of my life. And to me, the way that I describe the feeling of anxiety is just overwhelm. I'm just feeling too many things all at once. And I
Yeah.
have a really hard time thinking clearly.
Mhm.
The frustrating part, though, is that if you want to get through that, as I mentioned before, you have to really feel every nook and cranny of that overwhelm just to acknowledge it. For example, if you have a friend that comes to you and he or she just like, let's say they had a really bad date and they're just a mess and their emotions are flying everywhere, you would sit with them most likely and say, "It's okay, sweetie. You let it out. You feel all those feelings. You are totally right and valid to be feeling upset or angry or scared." You would just allow space for this person to be going through whatever it is they're going through. It's just part of the human experience. But the sad thing is that we don't give ourselves that same space. What we end up doing is say, "Oh, I can't feel that. It's too scary to feel that. I shouldn't feel that." And we end up being our worst critic instead of that cheerleader that we are for all the other people that we love in our lives.
Mhm.
I would say that if mindfulness is the foundational trick to date in peace, the second step is this creating a space of love and compassion for yourself,
Mhm.
allowing making time and placing intention on just being kind to yourself, being your own best friend.
Yeah.
Sounds cheesy, but it's so powerful.
It does sound a little, woo woo or whatever the word of the day is, right? But um I think to kind of hone in on that, what does that look like for Lauren, like you personally, so somebody can kind of, you know maybe identify with, what does space look like when you're giving yourself
Mm,
space?
sure. I have a very simple three-step process for creating space. And you can use this in every part of your life, but of course, I developed it to help me through the stress of dating. Whenever I find myself in a situation where I feel that overwhelm, or when I'm just like feeling stuck, I do step number one, which is to pause. You just stop what you're doing, stop what you're thinking, and try to come back to the present moment. Some ways that you can replace yourself in presence to really find and that present moment place where you can detach with the things that would normally carry you away into a spiral of negative thinking. The
Mhm.
tricks for this is to just notice any smells, feel the sensation of your body, anything that will bring you back to your senses. Taking a deep breath. When you're breathing and you're noticing your breath, you are in the present moment. And just allowing anything else that's happening around you to just be. Practice that space of being in the center of the storm. Things are whipping by your face at
Mhm.
lightning speed, but you're safe where you are. You're just observing them. So
Mhm.
that's step one, is pause. It allows you to detach from things that would normally trigger you to doing whatever it is you've always done. We have been coping with stress our whole life. And I bet that you found some way to behave in response to the trigger that's been working for you.
Mhm.
But it might not actually be getting you what you really want.
Mhm.
So we're in this pause place. It allows us to, step two, investigate whether our next reaction is going to be what we really need and want. Sure, you can choose to do the default after you've been in this pause place, but maybe you're like, typically when someone doesn't call me back, I freak out and start to worry that I did something wrong and I text them 50 times. Or maybe I need to go do some yoga and just detach a little bit more and see if that person texts me. This place of investigate is really important too, because it's right in line with that idea of allowing things to flow through you and accepting things as they are. If we don't take pause to really consider all of the players in the game of life, or all in the dating game, I guess we could say, we're not going to be able to really have all the data we need to make an informed next move. So if we're too busy reacting to the stress from that fight or flight place without pausing and without investigating, we're probably just going to make a decision that's rash and that will get us stuck in the same old toxic or unhealthy relationships that we've always found. So if you want something new, you got to make a new choice. The third step is exactly that. It's taking all that data that we gathered in the investigation stage and organizing them into two circles. Like if you can imagine a Venn diagram, right? The two circles overlap in this beautiful place that's called wise mind. And I'm not making this up. This is from a proven self-healing therapy technique called DBT. The idea here is that we're going to balance out anything that came from our emotions, any emotional data, with anything that came from our thinking mind or logic. That's in the other circle. So if we want to make a healthy decision for our love life, we want to make sure that that decision is equally balanced in emotional information and logical information. If we are only using one of these two circles, we're not seeing the whole picture. And the struggle with this is, and maybe you guys can sympathize with me, when you're in that early stage of a relationship, the honeymoon phase, it feels so good. And your emotions are like on hyperdrive. Like there is literally a love cocktail that goes off in your brain. All these neurochemicals are sending out red flags, being like, this is the best thing ever. I love being around this person. And then when you leave them, all those chemicals drop and you are literally craving them. You're addicted to seeing them. So your emotions are really all over the place, and you can't count on them to think about making a good long-term decision. For that, you need logic. So
can I stop you right there? For that, you need logic or life experience, perhaps. So like, we're both, so like you can kind of say like, well, that kind of happened last time kind of thing. So I didn't mean yeah.
No, please do. I'm kind of a steamroller. Feel free. I think that when I say logic, I'm thinking about that part of your brain that keeps track of every little thing that happened to you. The part of your brain that can project into the future and say, I want this kind of life and I want to have these kind of goals by this year. When you're in that emotional happy place of the honeymoon phase, you're not thinking about those things from the past or the future. It's the beauty of emotions, really. They keep you in the present moment because that's where it feels good. But you need to be able to balance them out. That's why I would highly recommend journaling. A lot of times in the honeymoon phase, if you can make some time after a date and just journal about your thoughts, ask yourself some of those logical questions to make sure that you're bringing that part of you back into balance with your emotions.
Logical questions such as?
Like, what are my goals, my values? What are the things that are important to me going forward? And does this person seem to, I'm sure maybe you've only gone out with him or her a couple of times, but from the data that you have gathered, are you lining up? Or is there an obvious conflict? Now, a conflict in interests might not be a big deal, right? Like if he or she likes documentaries and you like action films, I'm sure you can find a compromise there. But if they don't want kids and you do, that's going to cause some big waves. So the sooner that you can identify some of these logical inconsistencies, you're going to save yourself a lot of time. Some other important questions to ask from that logical space are, And I know this might be confusing, but you need to ask yourself, how did I feel?
Yeah.
The fact that I know this is confusing because I said, oh, we don't want to stay too stuck in emotion. We want to balance out with logic. But making time to ask, how did I feel after that moment has passed, is going to allow you to sift through that general overwhelm of emotion and be able to get to know the intricacies. Because a lot of times we might have a gut feeling about a person that either feels really off, but we can't put our finger on it, or a best case scenario, you're like, oh my God, this person was great. I want to see them again right now. But if we don't learn to take the time to be able to sift through that emotional big feeling and pick out the smaller bits, we won't be able to really see what our emotions are trying to teach us. They're really helpful when you can get to know them.
They're very helpful. And I think that goes across the board, right? Is what feels right versus the logical mind. I can see where your point is as far as like both when it comes to looking for a long-term partner. But I also want to kind of mention and maybe delve into perhaps you're used to the fight or flight feeling when you're growing up.
Yeah.
But not necessarily what you need in a life partner, but it's familiar. So you meet somebody and you have that same feeling. So to you, because of your childhood, it feels home. So somebody that's not really self-aware in that respect may be creating something and setting themselves up for something that they may not want to be in long term. How does somebody like that, like, kind of talk about that? If you know what I'm saying, Lauren?
Yeah, for sure. I have this equation to describe it. And it's exactly what you're saying, is that the familiarity aspect of like, wow, this person weirdly reminds me of my mom or my dad. And maybe you can't really put your finger on it, but you're like, this feels familiar. That's the first part of the equation. And then the second part of the equation is that like, there's something about them that feels like they could fill a hole in you. Like my whole life, I've just been craving this person because maybe this person will love me the way that my caregivers never did. And those two things put together is like a deeper sense of attraction. You know, like, of course, you're going to be physically attracted to people. And a lot of that is based in our society and evolution of what we physically find attractive. But I'm talking about the personality traits about people, the behavioral traits that you find attractive. It really has to do with your upbringing. And if you grew up in a home that wasn't hearts and stars and rainbows, and I'm sorry if you think that's true, that you had that, great if you think that, but chances are that every single home had like one or two little needs at least that weren't being met. You know, our parents love us, they try the best that they can, but it's kind of impossible to hit every single need. Some homes worse than others. But if you don't take the time to really understand, well, what are the needs of me that I wish that someone would have seen or heard or validated in me growing up? Because chances are you're looking for that now as an adult in other people.
Yeah.
And you're attracted to the people that are like your parents, in that they're probably not going to be the people that are going to be able to validate that for you. If you don't have that awareness, you're just going to keep picking people that are essentially going to be opening up the same childhood wounds over and over again. It's so hard to know what you need and want, though. Like, if we knew, we would all be like, oh, I don't need to choose toxic partners anymore because I know what I need. So I ended up, after a lot of trial and error and sitting with my own patterns and areas that I felt like I wasn't getting my needs met, I made a huge long list of all the most popular toxic dating patterns that I have seen in friends, myself, and in clients. I call these the toxic dating loops. I have 8 of them. And I would recommend grabbing one of them. You can get them from my Instagram page. But being able to look at a list of these things, you can finally be like, oh crap, now that I see this on paper, that's me. I see what I'm doing here. I'm the common denominator in all of this. But without that list, it's really hard to say, what am I doing wrong? We just need to see it sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Is any of that in your book?
Yes. Everything that we've been talking about so far is in my book, The Mindful Dating Journal, How to Find a Healthy Love That Lasts.
I'm just curious, Lauren, what brought you into this? Like what landed you into this work? Like, is this all you've done? Or, I mean, what did you do prior? Like, how did you find this kind of work?
Sure. Well, I think it all started from growing up with clinical anxiety. I was not having a great time at life as a kid. I struggled to be authentically myself because I thought that being myself wasn't something that other people wanted. I was a people pleaser, and I just felt like if I did show my true colors, that people would reject me. So I had a hard time making any relationships, really, friends and romantic relationships. I kept getting dumped and hurt over and over again. And one of the last times this happened to me was right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Like, we all got put into quarantine. And I was like, this is it. I am putting my foot down. This is the last time that I'm going to get dumped like this. I'm going to use this solitude to figure out what it is I need to do differently. And that's when I started really digging in. I was learning all about mindfulness, meditation, and of course, I put it all together into the first prototype of this book. I love, as an anxious person, I love when things are organized, and I'm a freak about spreadsheets. So what I actually did is I made a spreadsheet, a form that I was just for me to fill out after a date, after quarantine started to let up. I would go out and I'd come home and do exactly what we talked about. Gave myself space to reflect, to bring in that logic, and to sit with my feelings and really dissect them. And the form worked so well. Previously, I was just so afraid to date again because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I can't trust myself because I keep choosing these people. And I'm like, oh yeah, this person's going to be different. But then I get dumped again, the same way that it always happened before. So I just wanted to give up on dating before this form. But once I had my little dating spreadsheet, I was able to be like, okay, I'm going to designate time to make sure that I'm not going to get stuck in those traps. It worked so well that I ended up reaching out to a therapist who lived across the country, and we wrote the whole book on Zoom together. And she was like, yes, this isn't just working for you. This would work for anyone. So just so excited to share this lesson with people. I think everybody deserves to feel safe to be themselves. Everyone deserves to be in a healthy relationship. And the sad thing is the only thing stopping them is to just learn how to be in a healthy relationship with themselves first. Building that awareness, cultivating a habit of self-kindness, and reflecting regularly are the ways that you can do that.
Yeah. I think you said something very powerful too when you said learning how to trust yourself. It's huge. I mean, I've worked on myself for over 20 years now, Lauren. I've done the whole inner child healing, and I still continue to this day to have her pop up and need something, or I still struggle with boundaries and perhaps like speaking up for myself when I should in the moment kind of thing, and doubting myself and going back and forth, and so it's a never ending work for yourself. It's never ending. It's always going to be there, especially.
Oh, I hear you. Same with me.
Right? It's crazy how that is just so impactful. And it never leaves. It never leaves.
Yes. But I think the fact that you're aware of that and you can still be in the center of the storm, in the eye of the storm, when you're in that place where you're feeling untouchable, you're just watching that inner child, and you say, oh, there she is again. She just needs my comfort. It's like oh darn, I forget the name of a monk, but this really amazing monk that I used to watch a lot of YouTube videos would compare it to a baby. It's like when you struggle in life, if you see yourself as just a crying baby, like that baby's probably going to cry every couple of hours because it needs something. But mostly what it needs is just your kind affection and attention. And when your inner child starts crying, or when you get triggered, or when you feel like you're stuck in the same issue that you just, quote, healed, you're not going to look at that crying baby and say, I don't want to hold this thing anymore, and just drop it. No, you're going to say, I'm here for you. Let me just be with you and comfort you through this. And that's one of the beliefs I think that is really important to healing, that we need to let go of, this idea that you're ever going to be at peace permanently, that peace is some end destination. Peace is a process, the process of consistently comforting yourself through the struggles of life. There's going to be struggle every day, but you know what? There's going to be peaceful moments in between, and we can choose to savor those.
For sure. I want to touch on anxious attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's talk about
Are you an anxious attachment style?
I don't think I am. I feel like
Okay.
I'm more it's funny. I don't want to say I'm not avoidant, but since my divorce, I can say that I'm more that type to like want to run for the hills than the prior to this divorce. This was a huge breakup for me. It was huge. I thought till death do us part kind of thing. Yeah. So I think prior to that, I was more of the, like, I don't know the correct name for it, but I attached myself too much.
Yeah. There's anxious attachment, the avoidant, secure, and disorganized.
Okay, so prior to this, I was probably more anxious.
Yeah.
Prior. And now I'm a little maybe like avoidant, but I feel like I'm more in balance. So I think I could be more secure where I'm at right now, in within myself. But the triggers come up like with people that I get nervous inside, and it's almost like I want to do the opposite. Whereas before I'd get nervous inside and want to be with them. Now it's almost I get nervous inside and want to run,
Yeah, for sure.
Just because of my past. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of this too reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, of the fight or flight response.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a lot of times in the past when we've made a connection with someone, we got hurt in some way, and our brain made a mental note of that was like, oh no, if this kind of thing happens again, I need to choose to make a change or a behavior that's going to keep me safe. And sometimes when that connection didn't feel strong enough, what we would do as an anxious attacher would be like, I need to do something to reaffirm that we're connected. So you want to reach out, you want to force things to happen so that you can be like, okay, I feel better. They're not going to abandon me. I'm good. But on the other hand, if you get burned really bad because you put your hopes into this marriage and it didn't work out, I'm sure you tried everything. I trust that very deeply. Mm-hmm. And what happened though is that now you're like, well, I don't want to connect at all if I don't feel safe. So my reaction instead is going to be to give myself some distance until I can know that this person is safe to trust. And neither of these ways of dealing with a connection are bad or wrong. It's just the way that you need to function in order to feel safe and go at your own pace to connect with someone and to build a relationship. Ideally, we could all show up from a place of security, but I feel like personally, I can be secure, but if the situation with the other person is whatever details about it aren't feeling safe, like if I don't feel like there's open communication, or I don't feel like if it's allowed for me to be my authentic self, and of course it's always allowed, but if I'm getting any pushback or criticism or boundaries are getting pushed, then that's going to trigger something in me. That's not going to, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that if you feel safe, you're going to be much more likely to feel secure. So if your anxious attachment or your avoidant attachment are triggered, to me, that's kind of a mental note for me to say, okay, what about this person or this situation doesn't feel safe to me? And is that something that I can clear up through communication? Do I need to set a boundary so that I can feel safe? Or is it just that this person isn't compatible for me? I'm in a healthy relationship now. My partner is amazing. And typically, when I was dating in the past, before meeting them, my anxious attachment would be triggered like 75% of the time. But with them, I feel so peaceful because I trust that they are a safe person for me. So I don't get triggered. I mean, it's not perfect. There's things that we do that still bring up stuff, but my anxious attachment, this feeling that I'm not close enough to them or that there's a fear that they're going to leave me, that's not present because they make me feel safe, seen, heard. These are all the core things that I didn't feel like I had in my childhood.
Yeah.
So it's out there. It's possible, people. You can find this too. I want that for you so bad. I wish I could just help you with it, like do that for you. But what I can do is just help you find the path to it for yourself.
For sure. Oh, that's awesome, Lauren. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
How long have you been dating this person?
We've been dating for about 3 months, but they live in North Virginia and I live in New Jersey. So it's been long distance. We've met up a couple times, but I've really treasured that because it allowed us to set a really solid foundation of trust and communication and friendship. So I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
So you're in New Jersey?
I am, yeah.
Okay. So do you offer online coaching, or how do people work with you?
Yeah, sure. Primarily, I am working with clients to help them date in peace. I have a podcast with the same name that you can tune in and learn some insights and stories. You can, of course, purchase my book, or you can join in on some of my group coaching courses. They're live and they happen a few times a year. So I don't have that live right now. But I'm also here to just chat. I mean, I do this mostly because it's my life purpose and I want to just help people. So if you have any issues or questions, please, please, please feel free to reach out to me. Just send me a DM on Instagram. I'm here for you.
We're not ending the show, but I just was curious.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's awesome. I mean, ever since COVID, people are just more apt to do something online or over the phone or something like that. So that's good to know,
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about your thoughts on monogamy.
Yeah, sure. I kind of want to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah. Okay. So for me personally, I feel safer in a monogamous relationship. I don't feel that there can be any kind of safety or real true trust if there's somebody else that is involved sexually in your romantic relationship. I just, I don't see how that could work. But I was given a book last weekend, and I'm not sure if you've heard of the name, but it's called The Ethical Slut.
Yes.
You heard of the book? Okay. So I started reading the book, and then I did some research on the book, and there's this couple online that talk about how they're in a monogamous relationship, but they are true to their fantasies per se, or their attractions to other people when they're out in the world, and they come back and they talk about it with each other. And I like that idea because it's like, you know, we're human and we are attracted to other people, or we like that attention from that person. And I feel like if you're in a relationship with a sexual partner and you can actually have that dialogue, that honest, real, raw dialogue, I feel like that's kind of like a almost would bring you closer in a way, you know? And then it wouldn't be so hidden or so like, oh, I'm going to hide this kind of thing, because I think that's when things get messy per se. So I know that was a long thought behind my question to you.
No, sure. I agree with a lot of what you said. First and foremost, as an anxious attachment style, I think that I also feel safest in a monogamous relationship, but it's not that I'm against polyamory. I'm very much sex and pleasure positive, but my main requirement is that I need to feel safe with the person that I'm engaging in those things with. And it just so happens that as of right now, I haven't seen an opportunity for a polyamorous relationship where I did feel safe. I wouldn't rule it out, though. My ultimate answer about what do I think about monogamy, though, is you do you. I don't think that there's any right or wrong. It's a very like sex and pleasure is so personalized. I can't say what another person needs in their life in order to feel blissful and complete and safe. But I will validate you in what you're saying, because I think it's very important to be able to have an open line of communication with these topics. I think that a partner should be able to, in my ideal of a healthy relationship, should be able to hear and know and see every part of me, and I'll still feel like they will accept me. That unconditionally, they just have a curiosity. They just want to say, Lauren, tell me about you. What gets you off? You know? And I could say the craziest thing in the whole world, and I know that they would look back at me and say, still love you.
Yeah.
And that's what creates a safe space. So that's another way that I think being sex positive and pleasure positive and really open in your relationship can truly bring you together. If you feel safe enough to be vulnerable with them, test it out. Try a little something on them. See what they say. It could be that you've been afraid that they would reject you or judge you. Or you might learn just the opposite, that really turned them on and that they shared something with you that they were afraid to share. Next thing you know, your love life is going up several notches.
Yeah, right. It's interesting because I've been in such a long, I've had experience in long relationships, and in the beginning it's like all that what we're talking about is great, and then but like how do you keep that going, in like 10 years down the line? It's interesting. You would think after being with somebody for so long that the relationship gets closer, the bond gets closer, and I'm sure, look at Victoria Beckham and, David Beckham. I can never picture them having an issue, who knows, but that's just kind of, the story that I made up in my mind. Clearly they've gotten something going on there, that they've learned about each other. But in my experience and the people that I've talked to, it's like the more you're in the relationship, it's like the further the communication goes. It's like, I don't get it. Is it a chemical thing? Is it a brain? I don't get it.
It could very well be. The metaphor that's coming to my brain is that I spent some time traveling in Latin America. I was there for about 6 months. And the Airbnbs were just a toss-up of whether or not you would have enough hot water to make it through the shower. And coming back from that trip into my own apartment with consistently hot water for as long as I wanted it made me appreciate that so much more than when I had it. So I think what happens is that we just get so used to being with someone that really completes us and that really does turn us on, that it's like we start to get numb to it. So I would say the only thing that I would offer in this situation is find new ways to savor it, find new ways to appreciate them. And maybe that means doing meditations. Maybe that means looking back to memories from when you were younger and just like really saying, wow, that first time that I felt this, I felt so good and so seen and so turned on. How can I reconnect with that feeling when I'm with my partner tonight? Doing special things that feel different, like get out of your routine so that you can try to bring some novelty back into the situation. But it's truly personalized. I don't have a cut and paste answer for you there.
Yeah, no, I don't even know why. I just got into that, just like, just thinking like, just that's human nature, I guess. You're right.
Yeah.
We do get used to people. It's kind of like they become your parent. It's like you feel like this person's never going to leave my life. I can just treat them how I want, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about hard emotions? How do you handle hard emotions and having those hard conversations?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you a story to explain this. So I went out on a date earlier this year, and I had a great time. This woman was really fun. We had great conversations. We walked all around Philadelphia, and I got home and I was like, oh my God, I found somebody. I really like this girl. And I texted her right away, like, had a great time. I hope to see you soon, whatever. And a day went by and I didn't hear anything from her. And I started to get that anxious attachment signal in my head, like, alert, warning, there's no confirmation of connection. I felt like I needed to do something to bring them closer to me because I felt like they were too far away. So I ended up like counting down the minutes of like, okay, it's been 1 day and 3 hours. It's been 2 days. Why haven't they texted me back yet? And then I texted them a lot. I sent them a voicemail message. Like, this is just like the total bad idea of what you should do with your anxious attachment style. And wouldn't you know, they still didn't text me back. Go figure. So I was really upset and I was really wounded. Like I felt like I allowed it to mean something about me, that just because this person didn't text me back or didn't want to see me again, it meant that I was just unlovable and no one would want me. And I think you can sympathize. Rejection hurts because it just does. We're humans. No one wants to feel like we're unwanted or unlovable. Yeah. It took me a few days of just allowing that hard and uncomfortable emotion to be with me before I was able to to occupy that space of distance where I could sit in the center of the storm. A lot of times, this also reminds me of when we're feeling hard emotions. I like to think of that metaphor that people say, like, you're digging your own hole. Like, you think you can get out of it by just lingering there and wallowing. So it's like you're just digging and digging a deeper hole. But when we can step back from that and when we can detach from that enough to just be in that mindful place of presence, remember, we do this by taking deep breaths, paying attention to our senses, how our body is feeling. This allows us to stop digging our own hole and observe ourselves digging. And from this place of observation, we could be like, what are you doing, dummy? That's not helping. There's a ladder right over there. Why don't you try that?
Yeah.
And that place of detachment, though, is you have to be kind of kind to yourself, because it's very difficult to find that when you're first going through it. Even me, I have years of practice with this stuff, and it still took me several days of going through the hard emotions. So I think that would be my tip, is just be patient with yourself, allow yourself to process it, but don't wallow for too long. Catch yourself and say, am I ready to take a step back from this? And to just detach. And when I say detach, I don't mean push it away and repress it and ignore it. What I mean by that is to just occupy that space of mindful awareness where we notice it without judgment. We can say something like, I'm feeling anxious and it's okay. Or I'm feeling really angry. Why did this person ghost me? That's not cool. Great. You're just noticing what you're feeling. Well, I guess there was a little bit of judgment in that. Ideally without judgment. And then just try to move on with your day. Do something that makes you laugh. Spend time with friends. Hug a pet or a niece or nephew. And just try to move on from that. but without pushing it away. Just allow it to come with you. It's like that baby. Get one of those metaphorical things that you like strap the baby on in front of you. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And just carry that baby with you and just comfort it, but just downplay how much attention that you're giving to it. Try to allow space for new things to come back into your life.
Awesome. I love it. And that's a great way to wrap up the show, is always allow new things in your life. So what do you want to leave us with, Lauren? Where can people find you? Let us know.
Definitely just come join me on Instagram. I try to create a community where we can all validate and support each other. And as I mentioned before, please don't hesitate to send me a direct message. I want to chat. I want to connect. I want to help people so that they don't have to go through the same pain and suffering that I went through. The lessons that I use are clinically proven, and they will work for you as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you, Jenna.
Stay backstage so I can say goodbye to you a second time. Thank you. Well, thank you to Lauren Smith. Like I said, this is the first time I'm talking about dating and modern dating and how it's changed. We didn't even get into a lot of things that we wanted to talk about with masculine and feminine energies, but I'm sure she has so much to offer on her Instagram page. Lauren Smith, Meditate, at Instagram at Meditate, Instagram at Meditate. So until next time, like Lauren said, allow new things into your life, be surrounded by good people and good energy, and join me next time when I'm live. You can check out my Instagram too at Jenna Lisa Lobos, and DM me anytime with any questions, and take good care. Love your body and love your life. Take care.